let me contextualize what we're going to do and what we've been doing. Lately, like you guys you're in the middle to the bottom in the skill development, right? And you've been dominating in terms of majority, like who's here? What's the bulk of the class, okay? So we're really personalizing it towards you. You also have your knee problems, right? And so we're doing things you could do, okay? I think first of all, you guys should pay attention to that and be aware of that. For you, a lot of this stuff is intuitive. Like you just grew up in it and you kind of just, and it's probably the best way of training, but it won't be the best way of teaching, okay? And so what I'm giving you is the concepts behind why you do things the way you do, which you'll need to teach people, okay? Because most people, obviously, they can't do just by watching. Everything gets filtered and changes. Okay? And that's kind of what happened and why it will be helpful to you to return to the basics, because when you first got them, you changed them ever so slightly, and done so in a way that they make it difficult for you to get to the higher levels. Okay? The reason for this is that concentric nature between things, right? So you have a kind of, let's just call it character at the beginning here. The ability to receive something purely without any filtration, right, is a kind of release of self. Do you see that? And ultimately where you're headed is a release of self. So when we filter something at the beginning, we're not releasing self. In some ways, it's going to be antithetical to whatever you're doing. And then at a certain point, it will be antithetical to such a degree that you now can't do this other thing, okay? So we're going back, and you're going to get another chance at it, okay? So we're going to work at Tesabaki, okay? A lot of times, for example, as you're trying to ground, let's just use that one, as you're trying to ground or root, it gets trapped in your shoulder and in your bicep. And while ultimately it doesn't really matter what position your arm is or what geometry your arm takes, it's very difficult to get yourself in the ballpark with an arm geometry that is not conducive towards getting in the ballpark, okay? So we want to understand how our arms move, okay, and why they move that way. All right. How about we hand that to Andrew? You could get your chair or whatever. So when I say you can do whatever, then you need to do whatever, okay? My expectation is that you're not going to beat yourself up in any way, emotionally, mentally. It's your thing on how left in or left out you feel, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. And same thing, you be comfortable, all right? So, in the Tesabaki, you know you have an inward spiral and you have your outward spiral, okay? They kind of make that heart shape. And everything I do, I need to do that. My arms don't go up and down and they don't go in and out. Okay? I have my inward spiral and I have my outward spiral. Even though I name it in and out, you have to understand that in those two movements of the arm, you will be able to be what the inward spiral can work on its outside as well as on its inside. And same thing goes for the outward spiral. Okay? Like for example, in the Soto Kaiten from last night, you had an inward spiral, but you were on the outside of the arm, and that was really freaking you guys out, okay? But remember, the ultimate aim of the art is that Taoist aim of Zhangding, which is a reconciliation of dichotomy. So it doesn't make sense that you would have an art that ultimately goes in and out. Okay, in and out has to be able to become out and in, but also down and up and down. Okay. So I have those two moves. We're just gonna draw a torso here. Here's the head. Your outer line, that is your outer rim. So if you remember your outer rim, right, it's that area that comes down to the bottom of the lower tanden. It's this kind of oval shape, okay? And remember, your elbows always stay within your outer rim. Elbows never go outside the outer rim. This is not martially viable. You're not protecting your vital organs, okay? On the torso, this side of your shoulder down is yang. Quarter of your chest, I'm drawing a vertical grid, is yin. The middle of your chest is that equilibrium. Then you have another middle of your chest, so what do you think that is? Yin. And then another outer line is yang, okay? My elbow is my marker, not my hand, okay? My elbow is my marker. What I'm trying to do here, by never putting my elbow outside the outer rim, for example, and by moving in the inner and outward spiraling motion, as opposed to moving my arm this way or this way to achieve things, is this deltoid muscle here and all the tendons that go into its functioning is a martial weak point. It just cannot do the job. So Chiba Sensei didn't do this notion. He had all kinds of other ways of moving. This guy was very strong. He had injured shoulders. Okay? You will injure your shoulders eventually, just over decades of practice, if you're not using this inward-outward spiral. Okay? The inward-outward spiral is a way of not utilizing or isolating the inner deltoid or the upper deltoid, and instead bringing in back muscles to support that joint on the yang side. So the shoulder joint is going to get, in a way, of just metaphorically kind of fused or strengthened. But on the yin side, which we do all the time, is once I know how to fuse it, I can know how to release it. Okay? And that releasing is something you always do in your yin yields. So recently we did Tenchinage, remember? And boom, there was my yin yield on that arm. Going this way, whoa, I make contact with their head right here, do you remember? And I'm not gonna go like this, that's gonna hurt it. I'm gonna release the shoulder, okay? Or in Kokyuho, going this way. Remember, I bring their head to the arm. Well, what does the reversal on the yin yield? Boom, freeing the shoulder, boom, and then they go backwards, okay? So I want to learn how to fuse it for integrity reasons, but I also want to know how to release it for Aiki strategies, okay? If my elbow goes outside here, you can do, this looks like an inward spiral, do you see that? But it's not accomplishing what I want, okay? In terms of that shoulder integrity. So we have to pay attention to these lines, okay? And we're going to work with 3 levels. Again, in a triune cosmology, there's that 3 again. We have Jodan, Chudan, and Gedan. Dan means level, upper level, middle level, lower level. Okay? And I will transition between these levels with either an inward spiral or outward spiral or a combination of the two. Which means you don't do these differently like Chiba Sensei did. You just extend or inverse the inward and outward spiral. So keep that in mind, because I know some of you do this Chiba Sensei thing. What is that? Because we're going to prioritize the positioning of the elbow and the structural integrity of the shoulder, you don't want to hinge at the elbow. This should never happen. Okay? What I want to do instead is the upper arm bone is actually where all my extension is once I set the shoulder in place as described. So right now, if I'm thinking I'm holding them out and I'm maintaining positional integrity, here, this is where you start to use the bicep and tricep. But if you set the shoulder and you realize it's the upper arm bone that's actually doing that maintenance of that positional integrity. That's why we do this drill. He's pushing. It doesn't change the feeling. I set this, and the key thing here is there's no hinge here. And so the bicep and the tricep do not have to flex. Okay? I keep this elbow in place, which happens by making my upper arm bone my extension maintenance, okay? By keeping my shoulder locked. If I don't keep my shoulder locked, this is where you start to see all this stuff. Do you see? Okay? So we're gonna look for this. I'm not flexing my elbow, not bringing in tricep and bicep into it. My elbow never goes outside my outer rim, and I only make use of these movements here for all the movements, okay? But these movements here are going to be understood in a transcendence kind of way. So when I'm moving inside, I could be using the outside, okay? When I'm moving down, I could actually be bringing them up, etc. And at some point, when you go from Gedan to Chudan to Jodan, you're going to take one of those spirals and convert it from working on the sagittal plane to working on the vertical plane, like we did yesterday in Uchikai 10, okay? We'll do that a lot. So here we go. And we'll just use Tenkan, okay, or Tai no Henko. So you can see, it's like a magic trick now that you understand what's going, because I always show you relax, right? Relax. But if you pay attention, this part doesn't really move. I'm not going like this. Do you see that? So because, as I mentioned, it's the upper arm bone that's actually giving me my positional integrity, that you can wiggle the other stuff around. See that? Okay. So we're here, and we'll do Gedan, and Gedan is going to be part of your outward spiral. So you can see it, it's your outward spiral is in Ho-Yu-Ho. So Gedan goes this way. We should see that angle of cancellation in his elbow and already the beginning of tilt in his body. But because I rotate, you'll see that it'll be hard to recognize the outward spiral, because I'm not going to stay here. If I stay here, you would eventually see the shape. But because I'm going to rotate, people think that my arm was going in. See that? And that's going to use my inner deltoid. My arm is actually going out. My elbow, if you pay attention, is starting on the yang line, on that grid, hitting the yin line. The contact point is now on that zhangding line, that dynamic equilibrium or that center equilibrium, okay? And that is where the turn happens. One, turn on that. So when my hand gets to that spot, I should be turning. In other words, here I go, yin, here's a dynamic equilibrium. I went too far, and now I entered and turned. Do you see that? I don't know if you caught that. Do it this way. Yang, yin, pass, dynamic equilibrium, pass the spine, and you get this closed off area. You see? And now you enter, and it's all constricted. So when do you rotate? When your hand hits that middle of yin yang. Elbow in. All right, let's try it. Let's go back a step because in order to make my upper arm work the way that I described, you have to not put your lower arm in a place where you're going to want to use your bicep, okay? So there is a natural degree of articulation in the elbow that achieves that. And the way to find it is to lean over and let your arms hang naturally with no tension. And that bend is what comes back, making this incorrect. You see that? If I'm hanging over and I went like that, you'd go, relax, relax. I am. No, you're not, okay? Just let your hands hang. Hyperextending them, again, that would not be relaxing. So you find your natural bend, then you bring that up, and you keep that. Okay, let's try it again. Go. All right. Just going back a little bit so you can understand how martially precarious this joint is. Okay. He's going to try to bring me in utilizing that inner deltoid. So, now I'll give him some back muscle by anchoring his elbow a little bit, but there's still a lot of inner and upper deltoid here, you guys. He's a little stronger. But you can still feel it, right? Okay. And this is actually how a lot of people get injured, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, so you're using these muscle groups. All right, what he's going to do instead, if you pay attention now with our grid, this elbow is way outside that yang line. And that's what makes it precarious. It's also way outside the outer rim, which makes it non-martial. What he's going to do instead is by turning his quad, he now brings the elbow back on the yang line. Okay? And what he's going to do instead of doing this part, he's going to do the inward spiral. Okay? So he'd go here. So he brings that, and when he turns his hand, he brings his quad into it, and he's way stronger. Okay? That's what we're trying to do. All right, here we go. So and I hope you can see that now. What he's hitting is that upper arm bone. That's why this is all relaxed like this. Okay. So again, yang, it's going to go to yin. The hand's going to go to the spine, and that's where the turn happens. This is where the turning happens. Don't let your elbows go back out. Elbows are on that yang line. My hands are outside it, which is fine. Again. And again, it is the hour spiral being used to appear to go in. Okay, try it. Okay, so we'll go back a little bit. He's gonna bend over and learn his natural arm angle. He's gonna get a kinesthetic feeling of what that is. He comes up and he keeps it. Okay. What this arm angle does at the elbow is it actually sets the upper arm at a particular angle. And that particular angle is what allows the shoulder mechanism to set in place as we want it to be. Okay? If he bends his arm, you can see that it changed the angle of the upper arm, and of course then it changes the angle of the shoulder mechanism, now putting it in a less settable position. If we come back out to his natural angle, you can see that upper arm changed its angle, and therefore we're now in the settable position for the shoulder. If we go the other way and he extends that, again, the upper arm changed its angle, the shoulder changed its settability as well. Okay? So as he's doing Tenkan, for example, just on your own, like you're doing it, he goes. A lot of times, even on here, slightly he came in. Do you see? Slightly this arm bent more. That's not the natural angle that he had before. That's going to change this angle. This shoulder is now not settable. So from here, he has to do something else. Okay? So as he does his Tenkan, you have a sense of what that is, because that sense is giving you this, which is making this settable. And he goes, and he needs to keep that. Cannot change this angle. Like usually you go, I want to get heavy. Well, you change that angle now, and this is not settable. Okay? So pay attention to that. Continue. Right? So to do Chudan, you have to first pass through Gedan. Pass through Gedan. This hand is again in that Jiu-jitsu area on my body, and that's when I make the transition over to Chudan. Starts with Gedan, turns. When you turn into that hand position, don't go back and have this hyperextended elbow, and then just spin your wrist. It's a spiral, remember, an inward-outward spiral. So my wrist and elbow cannot be on the same sphere turning at the same time. The wrist is going to turn, and then the elbow follows. Because I went from Gedan to Chudan, you'll see him lift a little. Again, my mind is on that upper arm setting the shoulder. So even though I'm here and I'm moving my hands, I'm concentrating on the upper arm part. When does the transition happen? Again, on that Jiu-jitsu line. Boom. Not before, not after. All right, let's go. Chudan. You have in the historical, energetic understanding of the body, you don't have 7 chakra. Okay? You have 5. 5 is always the number. So you have a lower one, a middle one, and an upper one that we want to pay attention to here. Okay? So when you do Gedan, this is going to come to that lower one, your hara area. And when you do Chudan, it's around your heart area. Okay? So you're here like this, not up here in the shoulder area. Okay? Here like this. Boom. I'll pass through that lower, home, home. Here in this heart area here, okay? That's where Chudan ends. All right, try it again. So as I noted earlier, and then just now where I was at the lower, and then I came to the middle, you should see an elevation change in him, okay? So when I go down, you can see that he's going down, and when I came up from going down, then you should see that he's coming up, okay? He should not be walking around me like that. You should see an elevation change. And that's us converting these spirals that are working on the sagittal plane. Well, vertical, I'm going from vertical to sagittal, and then I'm going to go back to vertical. And that's Jodan. So I pass through Gedan. My rotation is when the grip reaches the Zhangding on my body. I pass through Chudan, and then I'll bring that up because he was already rising. That's where Jodan is. It's not that I go here and flex my bicep and try to get him up. He is being lifted from the beginning. And so he's going up. This makes this a yin move. I'm following him. I'm not lifting him. He was already being lifted here. Boom. Don't get greedy, go here, leave out Chudan and start to lift this. It's not the same. Chudan did the lifting. Whoa. All right, let's try it, Jodan. So what I was trying to say is that as you go into Chudan, I went low, and Chudan is what moves him forward and up. And since he's going up, there's a yin space, and that's where Jodan happens. Jodan is not him down, and then I lift him up, and he keeps his grip. I move him on Chudan, boom, Chudan, boom, is going this way. Chudan moves him up. I stay with his grip. You see? And now I just move myself into that place. Gedan, Chudan moves him. Boom, look how high my hand is. And then I would just move myself into that place. So resist here, and then you pulling his hand up like that. You can see there's way less action in his center. So boom, boom, that's what you want. Okay? Then it is effortless. You're not using the bicep. Okay? Go. So just at the beginning I said this is the outward spiral in Gedan, but it doesn't look like it because I changed my orientation to it. So it looks like it was going in this way. Jodan is your inward spiral, but I changed my orientation to it. And it allowed me to convert it from working on the sagittal plane to the vertical plane again. Okay? Which is why I don't just go here. That's not one of my movements. Keep your grip. I'm here in Chudan, passing through, and then I change my orientation to it. If I didn't change my orientation to it, you would see it's just this. But I'm going to change where I am. So I'm going to move myself over here and lower myself. And this is where you have your Jodan. So resist the temptation, even as when it gets effortless, like boom, you threw him so high that, yeah, I'm just going to bend my elbow. Okay? Instead, finish the inward spiral. Boom, boom. I'm going to keep that movement going. It's just Idiminage up high. So if you pay attention, where my hand ends up is not here like I'm doing the scuba diving universal signal for shark. Okay? I keep the spiral going, and the grab is on my center line. Okay? Because I want that elbow closer to my center line. I move this out like this. No, that's not where that elbow goes. Okay? Grab is on the Jiu-jitsu line, elbow is on the yin line. Okay? Try it. Okay, we ran into a common problem here, and it is part of the Tesabaki because we use the Tesabaki in the Tenkan maneuver, okay? So the goal that we want is that I don't start entering and rotating until the grip comes to that center line on me, that equilibrium between yin and yang. But if I bring the grip there and don't move my body at all, you get crunched here, and that's going to cause problems. So what our people here today were doing is they go, well, I'm feeling crunched, and so now they start turning, and now they turned without the wrist on the center line. Maybe come over here, Andrew. You see? Okay. So there is, in the way there is a yang and yin grid on your chest, there's one on your quad. So I'm going to bring the elbow into the yang line. Just a little slower, please. Here. The elbow is now on the yang line of the quad. And now the quad is what's going to finish this. And now I get that. The grip is on my center line. Okay? Another thing to note then is, just like your inward spiral, the hand or the wrist spiral is doing something different at a different time to what the elbow is doing in its role in the inward spiral. The same thing here, as you wouldn't turn them equally, it's not going to achieve what you want. I don't ever move my quad and my elbow at the same way, at the same rate, okay? So you can see the elbow's moving at one rate to the Jiu-jitsu line. Same thing here. The quad will move there, but at a different rate. Not at the same time. That's going to have you pull. So elbow comes to the quad yang. So it already started. And then the quad picks it up. The hand is traveling at a faster rate. Push now. Okay?